October 29, 1967. Singapore General Hospital. 2 a.m. A young man bursts through the emergency room doors, gripping his crotch with both hands. He's sweating, hyperventilating, terrified. "Help me! It's shrinking. It's going inside. I'm going to die." The doctors examine him. His anatomy is completely normal, but he won't let go. He's convinced that if he loosens his grip, his penis will retract into his abdomen and he'll die. Within hours, more men arrive. 10, 20, 50. By the end of the day, 97 men have sought emergency treatment for the same condition. They're using chopsticks, rubber bands, clothespins, and clamps to prevent their genitals from disappearing. Some have their family members holding onto them for hours. This isn't a disease. It's not a virus. It's not physically happening. This is Koro, a mass psychogenic illness where hundreds of people genuinely believed their genitals were retracting into their bodies and would kill them. Over the next 10 days, at least 469 cases would be officially recorded. The real number was probably much higher. Hospitals were overwhelmed. Pork sales plummeted. The government held emergency press conferences. And it all started with a rumor about vaccinated pigs. This is the Great Singapore Penis Panic of 1967. And it's one of the strangest episodes of mass hysteria in modern history. Subscribe right now if you want history's weirdest stories. Hit that bell. Drop a comment. Have you ever heard of Koro? Most people haven't. Because this isn't just a bizarre medical anomaly. This is a window into how mass hysteria works, how rumors spread, how cultural beliefs shape physical symptoms, how anxiety becomes contagious. Singapore in 1967 was newly independent, just 2 years as a nation, modernizing rapidly, caught between tradition and progress. And that tension created the perfect conditions for collective panic. What happened in October 1967 shows us that mass psychogenic illness is real. Cultural context matters. Anxiety is contagious. Modern, educated societies aren't immune to hysteria. Let's go to Singapore in the fall of 1967 and watch an entire city convince itself that a pork vaccine was stealing men's genitals. Koro is a culture-bound syndrome, a condition that only exists in specific cultural contexts. The term comes from the Malay word kara, meaning head of a turtle, like a turtle retracting its head into its shell. The syndrome, intense, overwhelming fear that the genitals are shrinking or retracting into the body. Belief that if the retraction completes, death will follow. Acute panic attacks lasting hours or days. Physical attempts to prevent retraction, holding, pulling, clamping. Other symptoms: sweating, heart palpitations, extreme anxiety. Critically, there is no actual physical retraction. Medical examinations always show normal anatomy. The shrinkage is perceived, not real. But to the person experiencing it, feels absolutely real. The terror is genuine. Koro appears throughout history. China. References in medical texts from the Qing dynasty, 1644 to 1912, called Suoyong, or Shukyong, meaning shrinking yang. Traditional Chinese medicine attributed it to imbalance between yin and yang, loss of vital energy, cold qi invasion during sexual intercourse, female fox spirits stealing male essence. Southeast Asia, particularly common in Chinese diaspora communities in Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia. West Africa, 1990s to 2000s epidemics where people believed others could steal genitals through magic. At least 36 people were killed by mobs after being accused of genital theft. Europe, medieval the Malleus Maleficarum, 1487. A witch-hunting manual describes cases where men believed witches had made their penises disappear. Modern cases. Sporadic reports from Canada, France, Britain, Nigeria, Sudan, India. But the 1967 Singapore epidemic remains the best documented case ever. To understand why this happened in Singapore in 1967, you need to understand the context. Singapore's situation. August 9, 1965. Singapore separates from Malaysia and becomes independent. They didn't want independence, it was forced on them. Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew famously cried on television. 1965 to 1967. The new nation is fragile. Building institutions. Modernizing rapidly. Trying to create a national identity from a multi-ethnic population. 75% Chinese. 15% Malay. 7% Indian. Multiple languages, religions, cultures. Economic anxiety. Unemployment was high. People worried about food security, housing, jobs. Cultural tensions. Traditional beliefs versus modernization. Chinese medicine versus Western medicine. Old superstitions versus scientific thinking. The pork context. Pork was and is a staple in Singapore, essential to Chinese cuisine. In October 1967, newspapers reported pigs were being vaccinated against swine fever. Some chickens had been injected with estrogen to increase growth. This was true. Rumors spread that the pig vaccine might have similar hormonal effects. The triggering rumor. Someone claimed that eating pork from vaccinated pigs could cause coro. The logic completely false. Vaccines contain hormones. Hormones affect sexuality. Eating vaccinated pork could feminize men or shrink their genitals. Then came a report that an inoculated pig had died from penile retraction. That was enough. The epidemic began. Late October 1967. The first cases. A schoolboy heard rumors at school that contaminated pork caused coro. That morning, he'd eaten a steamed bun with pork. When he went to urinate, he looked down and felt his penis shrinking. Terrified, he grabbed it and ran to his parents shouting for help. His parents rushed him to the hospital, screaming that their son had suayang and would die if the retraction didn't stop. Doctors examined him. Completely normal. They gave him 10 milligrams of chlordiazepoxide, a tranquilizer, and he calmed down. But more patients followed. October 29th. The flood began. Singapore General Hospital's Accident and Emergency Department was seeing 70 to 80 coro cases per week at the peak. November 1st, one hospital recorded 97 cases in a single day. Patient demographics from the 1969 study. Age. Mostly under 20 years old. The average was young men and teenagers. Ethnicity. Overwhelmingly Chinese, though some Malay and Indian cases. Education, poorly educated, working class. Prior knowledge. Every single patient had heard about coro before experiencing it. Gender. Mostly male, but some women worried about breast or labia retraction. How patients tried to prevent retraction. The 1969 medical journal published photos and descriptions. Rubber bands wrapped tightly around the penis. Strings tied around it. Clothespins clamping it. Chopsticks used as splints. Family members physically holding onto the patient's genitals for hours. Some patients had wives or mothers gripping them constantly. One case report describes a man whose family took turns holding his penis for 8 hours straight until they could get medical help. The scenes at hospitals. Emergency rooms filled with panicked men, often still gripping themselves or having family members hold them. Doctors had to physically examine patients to prove anatomy was normal. Provide reassurance. Administer tranquilizers. Valium, chlordiazepoxide. Counsel patients that it was psychological, not physical. But the panic kept spreading. Why? Because of how they heard about it. My neighbor got coro after eating pork. My friend's brother is in the hospital right now. It's on the news. People are dying from vaccinated pork. The contagion wasn't biological. It was social. Economic impact. Pork sales plummeted overnight. Butchers and pork sellers couldn't sell their inventory. Restaurants stopped serving pork dishes. The Ministry of Primary Production held emergency meetings. Media coverage made it worse. Newspapers initially reported the cases sensationally. Mystery illness sweeps Singapore. Men rush to hospitals fearing genital shrinkage. Coro epidemic spreads to Johor Bahru, across the border in Malaysia. This amplified the panic. Every article convinced more people it was real. Early November 1967. The Singapore government realized they had a crisis. Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew was dealing with what he later called one of the oddest problems of his career. November 3rd. The Ministry of National Development issued a statement. Pork. Ignore rumors. This did nothing. The vague message didn't address the specific fears. November 4th. The Singapore Medical Association, SMA, held an emergency press conference. Led by Dr. Alang Gui, senior physician at Singapore General Hospital, the panel announced, scientific evidence shows no connection between vaccinated pork and Coro. The syndrome is purely psychological, a form of mass hysteria triggered by fear and rumor. Key messages. Swine fever vaccine is harmless to humans. Coro has no biological basis. No one has ever died from Coro. The shrinkage is imagined, not real. The announcement was carried on. National television, radio broadcasts, front-page newspaper coverage. The effect was almost immediate. November 5th. Singapore General Hospital caseload dropped from 38 patients to 17 in one day. November 7th. The Ministry of Health held another press conference. Doctors explained, Coro is a delusion caused by psychological worry. Patients experience normal physiological changes, such as retraction after cold exposure, after urination, during illness, and misinterpret them as dangerous shrinkage. Why did the government response work? Trust in authority. Unlike modern Western societies where government health messages might spark conspiracy theories, Singaporeans in 1967 generally trusted their government and medical professionals. Lee Kuan Yew's government had cleaned up corruption, improved living standards rapidly, built credibility through competence. When doctors said, it's not real, people believed them. Clarity. The message was clear, simple, repeated across all media. The psychological, not physical. No one has died. The vaccine is safe. Stop panicking. By mid-November, the epidemic was over. New cases dropped to nearly zero. Emergency rooms returned to normal. Official count, 469 cases in Western hospitals. But the real number was certainly higher because many went to traditional Chinese medicine practitioners. Not counted. Some didn't seek treatment at all. Some were too embarrassed to report. Estimates suggest 1,000 plus people were affected. So what actually happened? How do you explain mass hysteria affecting hundreds of people? The 1969 study, doctors who treated Coro patients published a comprehensive study in the Singapore Medical Journal, December 1969. Their findings. 1. Social contagion. All patients had previous knowledge of Coro. The onset usually followed a normal physiological cause of retraction, for example, after a bath, after passing urine, after illness. Translation. Men experienced normal shrinkage from cold, anxiety, post-urination, remembered the Coro rumors, panicked, and convinced themselves it was happening. 2. Cultural belief. For Chinese men, the syndrome carried symbolic weight. Traditional beliefs linked genital retraction to loss of vital energy. Folklore suggested it could be fatal. Anxiety about masculinity, virility, sexual potency. 3. Mass psychogenic illness. This is a real psychological phenomenon where symptoms spread through social networks. Fear is contagious. Suggestion creates physical sensations. Group belief reinforces individual experience. Other famous examples. June bug epidemic. 1962 factory workers in the U.S. believed they were being bitten by bugs. No bugs existed. Tanganyika laughter epidemic. 1962 uncontrollable laughing spread through schools in Tanzania. Leroy mystery illness. 2011 to 2012 teenagers in New York developed tics and seizures. Psychological, not biological. 4. Anxiety amplification. Singapore in 1967 was anxious. New nation, uncertain future. Food safety concerns. Rapid modernization creating cultural stress. Youth unemployment. This background anxiety needed an outlet. The Coro rumor provided one. 5. Misinterpretation of normal physiology. The penis naturally changes size throughout the day based on temperature. Cold causes retraction. Anxiety, stress hormones affect blood flow. Fatigue, recent urination or bathing. Young men unfamiliar with their body's normal variations panicked when they noticed these changes. The Chinese Physician Association's conclusion: the epidemic of Shukyang was due to fear, rumor-mongering, climatic conditions, and imbalance between heart and kidneys. Translation: fear plus rumors plus cultural beliefs plus anxiety equals mass hysteria. The Western Koro study team conclusion: Koro is a panic syndrome linked with cultural indoctrination. Immediate aftermath: no one died. Despite the terror, not a single person was harmed by Koro itself. Some suffered self-inflicted injuries from trying to prevent retraction, bruising, cuts, circulation problems from rubber bands and clamps. Economic recovery: pork sales recovered within weeks once the government confirmed vaccine safety. Butchers and restaurants resumed normal operations. Political lessons: the epidemic became a case study in government crisis management. Lessons learned: respond quickly to rumors with clear scientific information. Use trusted authorities, doctors, not politicians, to deliver messages. Coordinate across agencies, health ministry, medical association, media. Don't mock or dismiss public fears. Address them seriously. These lessons influenced how Singapore handles public health communication to this day. Academic impact: the 1967 Singapore epidemic became the most thoroughly documented Koro outbreak ever. Published in Singapore Medical Journal, 1969, British Medical Journal, 1968, numerous psychiatric and anthropological journals. It's still cited in medical literature about mass psychogenic illness. Later outbreaks: Singapore never had another Koro epidemic, but others did. Thailand, 1976, 350-plus cases, blamed on Vietnamese food poisoning. Thailand, 1982, another major outbreak. Northeast India, 1982, hundreds of cases. China, 1984 to 1985, over 3,000 cases across 16 provinces. Why did Koro fade? Researchers suggest economic development. Better quality of life reduces anxiety. Education. More scientific literacy. Modernization. Traditional beliefs weakened. Awareness. People now know about mass hysteria. Is Koro still happening? Yes, but individual cases, not epidemics. Psychiatrists still see occasional patients, mostly from Asian communities, who present with Koro symptoms. The DSM-5 Psychiatric Diagnostic Manual doesn't list Koro specifically, but it's discussed under somatic symptom disorder, illness anxiety disorder, body dysmorphic disorder, treatment, reassurance through physical examination, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, addressing underlying anxiety, sometimes medication for panic symptoms. Why should we care about a 1967 penis panic? Lesson 1. Mass hysteria is real. Educated, modern people in a developed city experienced collective delusion. It's not about stupidity, it's about how human psychology works in groups. Lesson 2. Cultural context matters. Koro specifically affected Chinese communities because of cultural beliefs about genital retraction and vital energy. Different cultures have different mass hysteria manifestations. Lesson 3. Anxiety is contagious. When people are stressed, fearful, uncertain, they're vulnerable to suggestion. The symptoms spread person to person like a virus. Lesson 4. Misinformation kills, or at least causes panic. The vaccinated pork rumor was completely false, but it triggered a public health crisis. Sound familiar in the age of social media? Lesson 5. Trust in institutions prevents panic. Singapore's epidemic ended quickly because people trusted their doctors and government. In societies with low institutional trust, these crises last longer. Modern parallels. Anti-vaccine movements spread through social networks. Havana syndrome. Diplomats experiencing mysterious symptoms, possibly mass psychogenic. 5G conspiracy theories claiming cell towers cause illness. Morgellons disease. People believe fibers are growing from their skin. Mass psychogenic illness didn't disappear. It just takes new forms. 469 officially recorded cases. Probably 1,000 plus total. 10 days of panic. 0 deaths. Hundreds of men using chopsticks and rubber bands to prevent their genitals from disappearing. The Great Singapore Penis Panic of 1967 sounds absurd. And in some ways it was, but it's also deeply human. These weren't stupid people. They were anxious people in an uncertain time, influenced by cultural beliefs, responding to frightening rumors. The symptoms were real, the terror was genuine. The physical sensations were experienced, even if they weren't caused by biology. This is how mass hysteria works. This is how collective panic spreads. This is what happens when fear becomes contagious. Singapore handled it well. Clear communication, trusted authorities, rapid response. The epidemic ended quickly with no deaths and minimal harm. But the lessons remain relevant, because we're still vulnerable to mass hysteria. We're still susceptible to rumor and fear. We still live in bodies we don't always understand, in cultures that shape how we experience the physical world. The next mass panic won't be about shrinking genitals. It'll be something else. Something that resonates with modern anxieties, spreads through social media, and convinces thousands of people that something impossible is happening. So here's my question. Could a Koro-style panic happen today? Or are we too scientifically literate? Or does social media actually make us more vulnerable to mass hysteria? Drop your take in the comments. And if this story opened your eyes to how mass hysteria works, subscribe, hit that bell, and share this with someone who needs to understand that collective delusion is real. Because sometimes the scariest things aren't real. They're just believed by enough people to become real.